Hey family, welcome back to Buzzworthy Veterans. I'm your host, Ant Stroud. Today I have the honor and privilege sitting next to Scott Seaver with Radiant Brass Instruments. Hey Scott, thanks for being here.
Hey Ant, thanks for having me.
So, let's start off with your military service. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I was in the Army for 4.5 years doing Army HR. I spent 3 years in Alaska, and then my final time was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Wow, Alaska to South Carolina.
Right. Well, Florida to Alaska. That's even crazier.
So before you were in Alaska, you were where? Before you joined?
Before I joined, I'm born and raised here in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, all right. So you Jacksonville, Florida to Alaska, which is, if you didn't know, completely different. Like climate and everything is completely different.
It is.
How was that experience?
24-hour daylight, 24-hour darkness, very hot, very cold, very interesting. Yeah.
My cousin, he was in the Army and he got to go to Alaska. So when I joined the Navy, I really tried to go to Alaska. And they're like, Navy don't go to Alaska.
No, freeze the boats.
Yeah. I'm like, but Alaska's around water. How does Navy not go out there? Like, yeah, Navy don't go to Alaska. So I was very jealous of that. But you were in Alaska. Mm-hmm. You spent 3 years there and then you go to South Carolina.
South Carolina.
How was that?
If I could have spent the rest of my life in South Carolina, I would. It was really awesome. Awesome. It was a training base, so that's where we trained all the new recruits.
Okay, perfect. So you did a bang-up job in Alaska. Right. They're like, you know what, you're so good, we want you to go train other people. We're going to send you to South Carolina.
Yeah, when I re-enlisted, they were like, hey, where do you want to go? Because you're in Alaska, you can go anywhere. I was like, give me Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Relax in Jackson. It's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's awesome. Such an experience, and thank you for your service. Now let's jump into Radiant Brass Instruments. What is that?
It is an online brass instrument music retail company. Okay. So I sell brass instruments, tubas, trombones, trumpets, French horns, baritones, and euphoniums.
That's awesome. And for most of those instruments, what age do people start getting their kids into those kind of instruments?
Usually middle school, 6th grade, 7th and 8th. And that's my biggest demographic for sales is those aged students and then community members, which would be retirees.
Okay, nice. Something to do. They like relax and hobbies and stuff.
They were in band back in the day, and they want to start playing again once
Absolutely.
they retire.
Reliving their youth is awesome. I think I'm at that point where I'm ready to go backwards now.
Go backwards now.
Awesome. Okay, so how did this come about? Like, were you huge in band, and then how did that happen?
I joined a community band while I was in Fort Jackson, and I needed a new instrument. My old instrument was all banged up. It was a Yamaha. It cost me $6,000, and I was like, I can't afford that. Yes. So I got into contact with a Chinese supplier, and they're like, yeah, we make them for our own people. We can make them for you too. So I was like, well, I can also sell these, not only for myself. So that's exactly how I did it at the end of my military service, and I still do that today.
Okay, so you actually were in the military while working on this business as well.
Correct. Yes.
And then you said, you know what, I love this so much. I see what a resource it is to people to save them money at the end of the day. Let's continue this.
Correct.
And then you moved back to Jacksonville.
And then I moved back to Jacksonville. And now I'm also a full-time student at UNF.
Really? What are you studying there?
MBA, so Master's of Business Administration.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I love furthering education. And I'm assuming that you will continue to grow your online business?
Correct. Yes.
Any hopes of a brick and mortar one day?
No. I like a global marketplace, actually.
Good. That's awesome. Yeah. That's definitely cost-effective overhead. Definitely
stay in my pajamas.
All of us through 2020 with the COVID, half pajamas, half business on the top. Right? But you get full pajamas all the time.
Right. Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, let's talk about that transition because, like you said, you were in and working on this business. When you got out, how was that transition for you? Because you were a group, before we get out, I don't want to say a number because we're not a number, but in a sense, we're numbers of plenty. Mm-hmm. When you get out and you own your own business, you're number one. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, it's a drastically different experience, especially between people. You don't have that support system anymore, right? That your sergeant's not there anymore. Company commander's not there anymore. These people that took care of you, they're not there anymore. Yeah. I mean, you can always call them up, which is always nice. But then you're on your own. You got to get up on your own. Get out of bed. There's no formation, right? Yeah. There's no rules like that. So I think that's the biggest difference is that you're no longer around people that that you can depend on, like family.
Absolutely. So how did you Did you use any resources? How did you get through that? Because you're a business of one, and
Right.
there was nobody there to hold your hand and say, you have to be up at this time.
Right.
You have to send these emails by this day. Like, that's all on you and your
It
willpower.
is, yeah.
How did you make that mind shift change?
I think it's just a discipline that you get while you're in the military. And then you just choose, look, I've been through so much. This is a cakewalk, so I can easily do this. And I feel like ever since I left Alaska, I haven't worked a day in my life. It's just
Awesome.
everything has been so much easier. So when I was coming in here today, it was rained on. And for some people, they may have canceled.
Yeah.
But an Army guy, you're like, well, I was out in the month, out in the field in the Alaskan cold and rain and snow. It's nothing. So
Right. You did it once. You persevered through it.
yeah, and so now everything in relation to that is pretty easy.
Well, that's awesome. I'm excited for you and your online business and your furthering education. If anybody want to reach out to you regarding instruments, how do they do that?
They would just go to radiantbrassinstruments.com.
Awesome. All right, family. If you would like to learn more about Scott and Radiant Brass Instruments, please visit iwannabuzz.com. We thank Scott for being here today, and we welcome him to the family. That's going to be it for this episode. I'm Ant Stroud. Remember, always vets, always family. I'll see you next time.